Hi everyone, this is Andrew at Crown Academy of English. Today's lesson is called Show, Don't Tell. So these are some creative writing tips. So here is an example of telling. Mark hated his job and his colleagues. So this is an example of telling. And so telling is where the author is explicitly telling the reader something about Mark's character. Okay, so we're telling the reader that a certain characteristic about Mark. And of course, the reader understands, but doesn't really feel involved in the story. The reader doesn't experience anything, doesn't have a connection with the story, doesn't have a connection with Mark in particular. The reader is unable to visualize or imagine the story. When you read this, you're not in the story, you're not picturing it, you're not visualizing it. So let's now express this same idea through the technique of showing. Okay, so we're going to convert this into showing. So this is my example. It was Monday morning. Mark slumped into his chair, let out a sigh and turned his computer on. He glanced at his watch. 9:20. Not bad, he said under his breath as he sipped his coffee while watching his first YouTube video of the day. Hey Mark. He felt a firm hand on his left shoulder and looked up to see Tom staring back at him with his pathetic, cheesy grin. He was wearing a Harry Potter tie with matching cufflinks. What a tool. What do you want? Mark snapped. We've received the sales report and I need you to take a look at it before the meeting, Tom replied, before thrusting the report onto Mark's desk. Meeting? What meeting? Mark replied, in between yawning. Oh, you know, the sales meeting that we have held every Monday morning for the last 5 years. Idiot, Mark muttered. He grabbed the sales report, tossed it into the bin, and got up to go and get his second coffee of the day. So here we are showing the idea that Mark hates his work and hates his colleagues. And we can imagine and visualize the story. I don't know about you, but this is how I imagine Mark. Really, really frustrated at his desk, throwing the report into the bin and just absolutely really, really angry, infuriated at his work, at his own situation, and really, really disliking his job. But notice here that nowhere in the story have we said the word hate his colleagues or hates his job, because that would be telling. We are just simply showing the situation. We are giving proof and examples of his behavior that proves that he dislikes and hates his job and colleagues. Our readers are intelligent enough to understand and to come to that conclusion that he hates his job and he hates his colleagues. But the difference here is that we're in the story. The reader is in the story, can relate to Mark, is following the story in real time. It's much more exciting, it's much more interesting for the reader than simply telling the reader Mark hates his job and hates his colleagues. So it makes our writing, showing makes our writing much, much more interesting for the reader. It makes the reader really, really want to turn the pages and find out what happens next. So a quick summary. Let's compare telling with showing. Telling is a compressed version of events with few details. So we're compacting time down. We're summarizing maybe 20 minutes of action into 1 or 2 lines. Telling contains generalities. We're generalizing. And telling, we're expressing ideas. We're explicitly giving the idea to the reader, using adjectives, for example. And telling, this is very important, telling is in the language of us, the author. It's in the language of the author, and it's from outside the story, really. It's like a narration. Showing, on the other hand, is a full version of real-time events with lots of details. Okay, we're not missing anything out. That's the important thing here. Here we are skipping out lots of details, and showing, we're including all of the details. It's a full scene. Showing contains specifics, very specific information, like actions, dialogue, thoughts, and very detailed descriptions. Showing expresses experiences of what really happens, what the character and what all the characters are experiencing. And showing provides the proof that an idea is true. So in my previous example, we are providing the proof to the reader that Mark hates his colleagues and hates his job. And very important, showing is in the language of the character, from the inside. Okay, so remember when I was saying Mark, he's in his inner thoughts, he's thinking of his colleague as an idiot, as a tool, for example. So it's really like the raw language of the character. Okay, it's not being, there's no filter on it. We're not filtering it as the author. Okay, whereas telling, it's in the language of the author. So here we can be rude if we want. If the character is rude and vulgar, then we would use a rude and vulgar language. If the character is very polite, then we will use that polite language. And finally, we are describing the actions of the characters without labels or generalities. So coming back to my example previously, when we were showing, we were not using the word, for example, we never said once that Mark hates his colleagues, okay, but we showed that, okay, we showed that idea, but we didn't have to specifically mention it, okay. Let's look at another example. So the idea is, and if we were telling, then this is the story. Jane boarded the plane. She felt scared. So this is what we are telling. Now let's express this through showing. So this is my take on it. Maybe you could try this exercise as well. Showing. Jane looked up and saw the stewardess closing and locking the cabin door. Oh my God. There's no turning back now, she thought. What have I done? Why have I put myself through this torture? She looked out of the window at the passengers getting off the plane that was parked next to them, wishing that she was one of them. She glanced to her right at the man casually reading his paper and nibbling a bar of chocolate. How the hell can he be so calm? As the plane started taxiing, she took another sip of water while holding a sick bag tightly in her right hand. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine being on a sandy beach somewhere, until she was suddenly brought back to reality by a loud voice. There are 2 emergency exits at the front, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the back of the plane. What? Why are they telling us this? Do they think we're going to crash? She couldn't take it anymore. She unfastened her seatbelt, stood up, and shouted, "Let me off this plane," at the top of her voice. So, again, the idea and the telling version was she felt scared. But notice when we show that idea, there is absolutely no need to mention the word scared. Okay, we just show that she is scared. And our readers are certainly intelligent enough to realize that this behavior shows that she is scared. Okay, there's absolutely no need to explicitly mention that fact. Okay, so again, we are showing detailed information. We're describing the action, and here we have a lot of examples of the internal dialogue and Jane's thoughts. Okay, how the hell can he be so calm? Do they think we are going to crash? So here we can really see that Jane is terrified, in fact. Okay, and again, it's much more interesting. I think we can really visualize Jane on the plane here in a complete panic attack, basically. She's in a complete panic attack. Whereas this version, there is no drama really at all, is there? We're just simply saying she felt scared. And even if we said she felt terrified, then it doesn't really give us an experience of the story. Telling, unfortunately, is everywhere. As writers, unfortunately, we have a natural tendency to tell. Telling can be in lots of places in writing, even when writing descriptions. He had an ugly face. It was an old building. The weather was very hot. He looked surprised. The children were bored. So all of these are examples of telling. And sometimes as writers we do it without even realizing we're doing it. It was an old building. Or think of ways that we can express this idea through showing. We could perhaps describe in detail I don't know, the cobwebs on the building, or the fact that the bricks are falling off it and there is maybe rust on some of the window frames, for example. So that would be much better to show why or show how the building is old rather than just saying it is old. The weather was very hot. There are ways that we can show that the weather was very hot rather than just telling the reader that the weather was very hot. So sometimes we are telling without even realizing it, and it's up to us, the reader, to go back. It's up to us, the author, to go back on our own work and identify these places where we're telling, and to try to then convert it into showing. And telling is very common in the first few drafts. It's common in a first draft because we often just want to write something. During each rewrite, we must identify the telling and convert it to showing wherever possible. A certain amount of telling is unavoidable, and it is fine, but always try to follow the rule: show, don't tell. Finally, let me give you an example of converting telling to showing. So the example would be the children were bored. Okay, so here are some areas that we can concentrate on to convert this into showing. So first of all, dialogue. Dialogue is excellent for showing something. Okay, so for example here we would answer the question, well, what do bored children say? And what do parents say to bored children? If we can answer those questions, then we're going to get some good dialogue to show this idea. Also, show what is happening. So show the action, basically. So we could, in this example, we would show what the bored children are doing. We can also show how people are reacting to the bored children. We could also show the consequences of the children being bored. What happens in their environment to other people. And very important, as we saw earlier, we can show thoughts, feelings, and internal dialogue. So in this example, show what the bored children were thinking and feeling. Show what the parents of the bored children were thinking and feeling. And even show what other people were thinking and feeling when they see the bored children. Okay, so all of these, if we can address all of these aspects, then we're going to be showing this idea. And most importantly of all of these, be specific. Present the proof that will show the idea that you want to express. And then the reader will come to the correct conclusion. So finally, show, don't tell. Okay? So that's the end of this video. If you're interested in some more creative writing tips, then write a comment below the video. And I'll be doing more of these tips if you're interested on Thursdays. These will be Thursdays, usually every other Thursday. Okay? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.